There's no way that that same culture is magically going to suddenly become more humanized when they're putting out content that's meant to reach another stakeholder. And what's getting complicated now is that now people are generating content with AI, and AI can help with content, but if you're over relying on it, remember, one of the key sources it's pulling its style from is all the marketing speak that we filled the internet up with, that it's now taking and turning into content really fast.
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Welcome back to another episode. With us today is Scott Murray. He is a humanized content specialist and advisor with his company, Human Content Works. He's bringing 20 years of content marketing expertise combined with a deep understanding of communication, helping businesses infuse their content with more humanized elements designed to enhance brand differentiation. Scott, so excited to have you on today. How you doing?
I'm good, Chris. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you and your audience today.
Absolutely. We appreciate it. We always like to ask our entrepreneurs, tell us about your journey. What were you doing before that kind of led you into what you're doing today?
Well, there's a couple ways I could do this. I won't take the airplane route and say, well, first the earth cooled and then the dinosaurs came, but won't go that far back. But really, it's kind of interesting. I did pursue mass communications as my bachelor's degree, and a lot of that early work was in video, although I did have an opportunity to do some audio advertising back when they had this thing called the phone book. And I wrote scripts for these audio ads that people would access through the phone. And then eventually worked on the TV side for a little bit. But around 2007, I was actually hired at the public broadcasting station here in Dallas because, surprise, their radio fundraising drives were not meeting goals on time, and they were dragging, and people were complaining and all that stuff because, as a lot of times, they're interrupting programming, asking for money, things like that. That was my first step into radio, really, and the nonprofit space, or I guess they call that a not-for-profit organization. And I actually got to do both TV and radio because in radio, after I was brought in and I basically had to come in and revamp all messaging, all strategy, all content, coach talent, even some of those who've been doing this for a long time. But once all that was done, we actually completely reversed everything, set records, started to get positive feedback from the public on the drive, which is unheard of if you've ever sat through a fundraising drive on the radio or TV. And I was there for 3.5 years. And I really look at that as the thing that put me on the path that I am now, where I've been so focused on humanizing content for the last 15 years across different industries and different types of content, because it all fits in different types of content. What I noticed was I just spent 3.5 years really having to drive content that did what? It had to not only stand out, but I also was reaching a cynical audience at that point in time, right? The people that are going, oh gosh, another fundraising break. But I had to change what they were going to hear, rephrase what they were going to hear, where they were engaged instead of turned off by it. And then it had to resonate with them emotionally and mean something to them in a way that would then what? Inspire a response, which in this case was giving money. Something that for-profits are doing, but they're wanting them to make a purchase. Well, this was right around the time when I left. This was right around the time where the internet, social media, and the consumers, whether they were B2B or B2C, were having similar demands, what they wanted from businesses on their content. Don't treat me like a number. Don't keep telling me to buy, and promote all these things. Start talking to me like a human being. Do something different. Give me something different. Build a relationship with me. Prove to me you're not just trying to do something for yourself here, that you have genuine interest in providing me with something. And I have focused the last 15 years on that, both as a full-time employee when I was working full-time and now as an independent consultant. And I've made a point to spend more time building on that educational background. I went back to school and got a master's in professional communication from Southern Utah University. That was professional communication in writing, advertising, social media, and all these little content and business-focused areas. And I'm about to finish another one from Arkansas State University that's on strategic communication, which has some roots on the internal side of the organization, which will impact how content is produced and how it resonates on the outside. I feel like it was good timing. And when I look at all the things that have happened just in the last 5 years with AI and just how much content saturation continues to fill up the internet, this humanization element is becoming more important than I could have even imagined 15 years ago.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. How many more degrees are you thinking about going for? Is it just a continuing education? You
Well,
can never have too much info, right?
yeah, I think I'm going to probably stop there because it is time consuming with everything else that's going on. But it's been good. It's been good to go back and just see where all these different areas of communication can apply. And what was really interesting about that first degree was I got through all of my courses that I was mapping out for that first one. And then that last course came up, and it was like one of those kind of throw ins, pick one of these. And one was on pop culture, and that was interesting, but didn't really align with business. And the only one I really had was crisis communication. And I thought, well, that's not going to really align, but it has the word communication in it. So I took it, and it ended up being totally relevant because all of the things that were important about planning and responding to crisis on the business side aligns with so many things we already should be doing on the marketing side. It dealt with not making assumptions about your audience, making sure that the words you use externally in certain situations are going to hit the right notes, aren't going to be interpreted wrong, how to be prepared for that, how to plan for that. It was all the things we should be doing on the content marketing side. It was just in a crisis framework. And I feel like over time, I've seen just how many situations there are in our everyday life and everyday business because have overlap because we are talking about what we should be doing on the human side of the business and be considering on the human side of the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of the troubles that we experience today in the world is almost from a breakdown of communication. It's because someone doesn't like what they said or how they said it, or maybe even their own personal internal experiences have shaped their perception on how they're perceiving that question or the statement. And I think now people are less trusting. They're more critical of brands, businesses, people in general. Their guards are up. The traditional upsell to sell this and buy this and move into that, those aren't really resonating with audiences now. People are resistant to it. How do we break that and bridge that gap to have better communication? Because it's not just the words, right? There's
Right.
visual, it's your actions. Actions speak a lot. It's like bringing all that communication piece together for these businesses. Are there certain businesses that you prefer to work with or have worked best with?
I wouldn't say that there's any that I've preferred to work with other than most of the people I work with are small to medium sized businesses. They're solopreneurs. And a lot of that is, I think, if I can just guess, is because I find that those are the ones that are really ready to take the necessary steps to stand out and connect today, really resonate. Because the thing about humanization is it does two things. It allows you to have industry differentiation and then audience connection. And I'm glad you brought up barriers because people underestimate those barriers. And part of that's because as marketers, we can get caught up kind of in our own philosophy of marketing, and we're not spending enough time thinking about that experience on the other side. And that's why marketing can fail so much because we're so interested in what we want to do with content and what our process is and getting it out the door that it'll fail because there's any number of reasons it'll fail. But we're not taking time to stop and think, okay, if we know what our consumer, or let's just say audience, has been experiencing on the content front, what can we do differently? They don't think, oh, here we go again with this. Because we might very well be well intentioned, better intentioned than our competitor, but if we're making stuff like our competitor makes, the consumer doesn't know the difference. There has to be a change in there where they go, okay, well, maybe these people are different because this is unique to me. This is not what I'm used to seeing. And it's amazing that the changes you can make for that opportunity to stand out. Then you just got to build on that because they may lower the defenses like this, but you got to work to get the rest of it down and get them engaging with you because look, we've all been on the consumer side. We all kind of have defenses and quick reactions to things based on some bad experiences we've had online, clickbait or any number of other things. We've got to prove to people that we're different, and that takes a little extra planning before we launch that content out for the first time.
Absolutely. And all these content and the topics within this framework that you talk about, are all these covered in length within the new book that you have now?
Yes, it was really an opportunity to go deeper, and the framework was built over everything that I had been able to look back on in that 15-year period, or really more of a 12-year period when I was working full time. Because when I went out on my own, I had to kind of figure out, what do people need to know now? Because if any of your listeners have worked full time and then decide to go out on their own, they too have learned, okay, the way I marketed myself as an employee and market myself as a business are two different things. For me, I could go out there as an employee and say, I can do everything. I can do any type of content and put strategy behind it. That's not going to work as a solopreneur. So I had to kind of figure out a way to turn around and go, okay, what was it that always worked? No matter what the industry was, no matter what the content was, when it was successful for all these different industries and all these different types of audiences, what was it? And I realized it was being relentlessly focused on audience from a communication standpoint. And then I said, if I needed to explain that for somebody else to do so they can have some of that success, what are the things that are needed in that? And that's how Stamp was built out. It was a good way to say, okay, well, I had to focus on these things, and this is how I'll lay it out. And that way the book allowed me to go into more detail about what those things mean. But on the flip side, it was also nice. It's like 175 pages. It's really all I focus on. So there's not a bunch of extra blah, blah, blah. And it really is about the framework.
And this sounds like it's not only just for the marketing side, because the communications piece spills over into the sales and the service even. So it's not just about getting the conversation started, but what happens within that conversation once they're interested. I feel like content starts the conversation. It builds trust and authority in this relationship, but that framework should really be carried into the rest of the organization too. The more human they could be, I feel like that's really going to resonate with the audience.
Yeah, I've been in work environments where the way people talked about content and the way people talked about audience was already having a negative impact on how people who heard that were then going on to their office or their work and generating content that was less human, not because they were any less interested than in helping somebody. It was just the culture put them in this mindset of get it out the door, or hit these numbers, or tell them they need to know this, or tell them that this is what they want and this is why they need it. And that was what they were taught. So if the other element of that is, how do meetings take place? Is it a two-way conversation situation in the culture? Are they thinking of the other side when leadership's talking to a team member or another leader? Is there empathy? Is there a willingness to stop and think before they say something, even as crucial conversations as in meetings that have stakes? Because if those things are missing, then it's going to be a lot harder to build content and have a framework, even from a content standpoint, that's also going to be thinking about the other side of the conversation when it comes to their audience. All that stuff is missing internally. There's no way that that same culture is magically going to suddenly become more humanized when they're putting out content that's meant to reach another stakeholder. In this case, it's the audience, it's the external stakeholder.
Right, absolutely. And I think something that you mentioned that really stands out is just that the leadership, the bigger ones, are people who are like us, the marketers, who have been conditioned to the benefits are because you do this. And we have these specific phrases we need to include, but it doesn't feels more forced. It doesn't happen naturally. And people pick up on that. Consumer, the client, the people, they can read that. Content that comes through my feed, I can tell if it's an ad or a sponsored post right off the bat. Other ones are a bit more clever in how they do a little brand promotion. It's a delicate balance, trying to use that traditional marketing communication piece with just being real and human. It's a balance.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we can do sometimes is we can focus a little more on trying to sound less like marketing, because that's what people are tired of. And what's getting complicated now is that now people are generating content with AI, and AI can help with content, but if you're over relying on it, remember, one of the key sources it's pulling its style from is all the marketing speak that we filled the internet up with, that it's now taking and turning into content really fast. That's why so many AI blogs start with "in an ever-changing world," because that's the stuff we would write when we were just back in 2012 when we were trying to flood the internet and win the game of link building and SEO through keywords. So now it's become even more important to really stand out and talk more like a human being. And it's amazing to me sometimes when I see like executives or leaders from a company come out on their own personal profile and write like marketing. They're writing it as if they were writing an email as part of a chain, and it's very written in that marketing speak instead of, hey, look at what we're doing and what we're focusing on, and writing in a way that says, I think this will be really important, or just something like you would say if you were standing in front of them, because there's so much terminology and so many ways that are written in content today that if you were standing in front of somebody, you wouldn't say it like that. And why? Because you would sound weird. And if we have the self-awareness to realize this doesn't sound human if I were to say it, it's probably not going to sound human if someone reads it, can actually be kind of a good way to help evolve that communication. Because one thing I've tried to get across is we don't give enough credit to the voices in our heads when we read something. I've given a presentation where I actually took a paragraph from a salesy marketing email I got in my inbox. And as someone with a radio TV background, I'd say, you literally could turn this paragraph into an infomercial. And I read it like a radio infomercial. And it works. And it reads like a marketing commercial. It literally could fit to a radio or TV commercial. But we're putting it out there. And when we read that in our head, that's probably the way it sounds. And there's actually neuroscience that proves that we will read things with voices in our heads and read things with familiar voices in our heads. And if we already don't like things that look or sound like commercials and our copy sounds like a commercial, then we're probably not going to spend much time on it.
Absolutely. A lot of fascinating stuff here. I wanted to give you the opportunity. Where can people find and connect with you online?
Well, I am most active on LinkedIn, and then I do have people reach out on the website sometimes, and that website is scottmurrayonline.com.
Wonderful. And we'll have the links available down in the show notes and the description for everyone to get connected with Scott here. Scott, I wanted to ask you, it's September 2025 right now. We're going to release in a few months. What are you most excited for kind of wrapping up 2025, going into 2026? Are there like new products or service offerings that you're excited to be launching? You have the book out now, or are you just kind of focusing on all the great things that you've been doing already?
Honestly, I am looking forward to maybe having more opportunities to speak next year. I got the opportunities to really start doing that a little more, or for the first time, I should say, this summer, and had a really good response. For my first time stepping out there in quite some time doing public speaking and talking about STAMP and talking about humanizing content. And I was really kind of gun shy about it a little bit because I thought there's so much AI talk. Mine talks a little bit about AI, but I'm focused more on the human element. I thought that was going to be like, you're a few years too late for that. When in actuality, I'd been at conferences where they heard so much AI talk that they loved the opportunity to hear about some human marketing. And it's been really helpful. And I've had a chance to talk to people afterwards that found it helpful and continue those conversations with them. I'm hoping there'll be some more opportunities to do that next year because I really like sharing things that I've learned. And then anytime I get to talk with other people, I learn from them. But it's really a good opportunity to be able to meet with more people and help more people through speaking opportunities. I'd like to be able to do more of that next year.
That is fantastic. And I totally agree. In the world of, it feels like AI is the new thing and it's the hot topic and that's what everybody is interested in. But really, I feel like it's very similar to ads and marketing where we've been bombarded with that topic. They're much more interested in getting a human element from it. I mean, we've all complained about getting the AI agent customer service when we call on the telephone, or we get the AI agent when we're having a chat support. It's like, can I just speak to a human, please? I'm dying and craving for just some sort of communication. Like, I need a real person here. It's nice that you're focusing on that. And I agree. I think AI here is helpful. It's a good tool. It's going to evolve. It's going to change. But the human element, I think, is more important now than ever.
Well, and it goes back to what we were just talking about with standing out and what AI is using to write. I found this really interesting post by Christopher Penn not long ago, and it was helpful for me because it kind of put a new layer of context into what I'm helping people do. because he basically said that he heard a lot of people tell him, and he's a big name in this space and has been for some time, that a lot of people were still saying, no, humans are still going to be needed in content marketing when it comes to copy and any number of things. It's never going to be just AI. The human beings are going to be needed. And so he thought, okay, I'm going to go look at the companies that these folks work for and just see how the content is written on their company websites. And he shared what he found, and it was the most generic, over the top marketing speak he'd ever seen. And he said, look, folks, here's the thing. AI can write that in 2 seconds, and I don't have to pay somebody to write this, because that's what AI does now. If you're going to say that marketers are still needed on the content side, they have to be able to write better than this, because this is what AI can do. And I was like, oh, this is perfect, because there is an art. I mean, it can be learned. There is an approach to humanize that content where it's still saying the same thing. It's just got more meaning behind it because a human was behind it. And then AI can help kind of fill gaps and help fine tune some things. But I really like that point, because I think it speaks volumes as to the next level as to why humanization is so important in content. Because as Christopher pointed out, AI can do this old marketing speak stuff and nothing flat. And if you're going to try to make the case that you are still needed, or they need to pay a salary for somebody to do this, then you have to show that you can do something different or better or more meaningful than what AI is going to turn out in a few seconds.
Absolutely. I feel like the more customization, the personalization is going to only enhance the communication aspect, the marketing, the sales. The more human you can be, I feel like the better it is. You're going to actually listen to your customers and your clients. You're going to be focused on them, as opposed to how little can I pay, how much can I put out there, and the bottom line is it valuable. If it's low quality content, if it's the same thing they can get from anywhere else, well, you're not really standing out or differentiating yourself. You're just kind of falling into the sea of sameness. So communication is key, and I agree that humans are going to be needed now more than ever as well.
Yeah, well, think about why people listen to this podcast. It's because they've developed a connection with you, and they value that connection, and they value what you provide them, and that's why they keep coming back. I mean, there's Notebook LM came up with a way to do something that sounds like two people are talking on a podcast and it's all AI, but I found all kinds of weird and repetition things that were in it from those two voices. It was cool, but you're not going to have that same connection listening to that. And I think about when I got a chance to talk to Andy Crestodina about this very thing. He said, think about why you go buy a book. You go buy it because you have this connection to the way that person writes. In my case, or my wife's case, that might be James Patterson. She wants to go read a book that James Patterson wrote, not James Patterson on ChatGPT. She wants James's book. So that's what she's interested in. And I think that was really valuable, because there's a reason why you're attached to those authors. And at a time where people are starved for human connection, businesses too can provide that through content in a very similar way.
Scott, I absolutely agree. Thank you so much for coming onto our show to share your wisdom, your experience, and everything that you're seeing, keeping your ear to the ground to everything marketing, technology, AI, communication. It's all coming together, and very important for a lot of our entrepreneurs, business owners, and marketers that are out there listening to this, to heed the advice and learn from the mistakes of others and see what's working, see what people are doing with their content, humanizing it, and actually having relationships and building communications with people. Scott, great work. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Chris. Thank you so much. And it's nice to talk with you and your audience today.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.